Tonight, as Taliban forces seal off Kabul's airport, a plea for help to get Canadians trapped in Afghanistan out.
Stand with us in solidarity. This is a time that we need you guys most.
Protesters gathered at Toronto City Hall, calling on the Canadian government to step up. Plus,
just screams, mostly from females, right? And then after that, it just went silent.
A triple shooting rocks the city's entertainment district. And
if you've ever driven down to Cherry Beach, you may have gone home with one of these as a souvenir, and they're not your regular run-of-the-mill parking ticket. They're $100. I'm Jessica Ng, and all that story for you coming up.
This is CBC Saturday News.
across Canada, people are taking to the streets to call for the government to do more to help stranded Canadians in Afghanistan. Rallies are being held in major cities, including Winnipeg and Montreal. The CBC's Hala Gonaim joins us live from a rally underway at Toronto City Hall. Hala, what are you hearing from people there?
As you mentioned, there are hundreds of people around me here, and more protesters just flooded into the City Hall complex here, all with a clear message to the Canadian government. Do not give up on Afghanistan. As you can hear, there are chants demanding freedom and peace in Afghanistan, especially for the people who are still stuck there, searching, desperately looking for a way out. I spoke to a few protesters today, and they have a list of demands. Have a listen. Members of the Canadian Afghan community and their allies are calling on their elected officials to do more to get people trapped in Afghanistan out.
It's really frustrating because this is one of the first promises that we got, that we'll do everything for those refugees, for those people that are on a hit list. We have to do everything to save those lives.
We want the international leaders, the Quebec government, the Canadian government to take more concrete and immediate action against what's the nightmare that is going on in Afghanistan, to bring peace, freedom, security.
This call echoed across the country today as protests were held in major Canadian cities, including Montreal, Toronto, and Winnipeg. Protesters are urging the Canadian government to increase refugee intake and expedite processing times for private sponsorships to bring Afghans to safety as soon as possible. Italian, French, and British military have flown their last evacuation flights out of the country. Protesters from those countries also took to the streets today as part of an international effort in more than 40 cities. Canada's airlift mission ended on Thursday after evacuating more than 3,700 people. It's unclear how many Canadians remain stranded in the country.
The only hope right now is that people can escape, and our foreign minister has said so. If you can get out of the country somehow or another, then we can look after you. But at the moment, it really depends on the degree to which the Taliban can clamp down on the country.
But advocates say that's not nearly enough.
I want the government to expand their eligibility for the refugees. I want them to get our people out, our Canadian citizens. I mean, I have Winnipeg family there that are citizens, permanent residents, that I want them to be able to get out of the country.
Now, protesters around me have already been here for several hours, but their energy is not letting up. They tell me that they will continue to fight for their loved ones in Afghanistan and others who are still stuck there, because they won't stop until their voice is heard and until they see actionable items done by their governments. Now, more protests are being held internationally tomorrow. Back to you.
Thanks, Hala. Our Hala Gonaim reporting live from us tonight from Toronto City Hall. Now, as Hala mentioned, organizations from the GTA are trying to help those in Afghanistan. The Afghan Women's Organization says they are collecting names and are in contact with Canadian immigration. When refugees arrive here in Canada, the organization provides things like food and clothing, as well as mental health supports.
Actually, mostly it's very emotional. I have been sometimes like overnight on the phone with the women in Afghanistan. They just say, what can we do? Please help us. And they say, pray for us.
Today, Ontario is reporting 835 new COVID-19 cases. That is the highest single-day count since early June. 7 deaths have also been confirmed, but 6 of them happened more than 2 months ago and are being counted now due to a data cleanup. The Ministry of Health says 675 of the new cases are in people who are not fully vaccinated or have an unknown vaccination status. At this point, nearly 83% of eligible Ontarians have received 1 dose of a COVID-19 vaccine.
People, of course, have ongoing barriers to vaccination. Some people still have ongoing anxieties with vaccination. Some people just don't want to get vaccinated. Of course, lots of people are ineligible, but I think we could help create strategies and support the various public health units in lowering barriers to vaccination. So is if you're eligible for vaccination, get vaccinated. It's as simple as that. I mean, that, of course, is a major layer of protection. It's not the only layer of protection, but it is one other major layer of protection that you can add that's under your control.
To the federal election campaign, Erin O'Toole and Jagmeet Singh have both condemned last night's unrest in Bolton, Ontario. Yesterday, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was set for a rally there, but cancelled his appearance just hours before, citing safety concerns. Both O'Toole and Singh addressed the incident on campaign stops of their own today.
No one should have to cancel their events where we have young people, we have volunteers, we have organizers. No one should have to cancel an event because they're worried about a danger to the safety of people coming out to a political event. That should not happen.
I strongly condemn any form of harassment and protest like we've seen. We're a democracy. We should be having a healthy and respectful debate of ideas.
Conservative MP Kyle Seeback is calling out some of his supporters for joining in on that protest. 4 protesters in the crowd were spotted wearing blue shirts written with Team Seeback. He spoke out against some of his campaign volunteers attending the event. In a statement, he says, "I learned tonight that a few of my supporters attended the protest outside Justin Trudeau's event tonight. My campaign has zero tolerance for obscenities or threatening behavior against any candidate." He added, "Accordingly, these individuals are no longer welcome in my campaign." NDP leader Jagmeet Singh was in Sudbury today, and he announced policies targeting student debt. The CBC's Tom Perry reports.
Jagmeet Singh made his pitch to students today. The NDP leader is promising to forgive up to $20,000 in student debt. He said he'd remove interest from federal loans and double student grants. Now, Singh is wrapping up a campaign swing that took him from Montreal to Manitoba and back through Northern Ontario. He focused mostly on affordability, student debt, affordable housing, lowering cell phone and internet bills, but he also addressed Indigenous issues and met with First Nations leaders in Winnipeg and in Thunder Bay. Now today, Singh condemned the angry protests we've been seeing at Liberal campaign events. He says no one should have to cancel a political event because they're worried about people's safety. Singh himself was confronted by a couple of anti-vaccine protesters who shouted insults at him before his event in Sudbury today. Afterward, when the NDP bus was leaving, a group of about 8 anti-vaccine, anti-mask protesters briefly blocked the way. They were holding up signs, they were yelling, they were giving the finger, but the whole thing lasted maybe a minute, and Singh wasn't even on the bus. Tom Perry, CBC News, Sudbury.
And the Erin O'Toole campaign was in the Maritimes today. The Conservative leader announced a set of policies aimed at fighting inflation.
Canada's recovery plan will start by lowering food prices. We will do this by not letting the big players off the hook. We will increase the maximum penalty for price fixing from $24 million to $100 million. We will also introduce criminal penalties, including jail time, for executives who engage in price fixing.
O'Toole says the Conservatives are the only party addressing inflation in the current campaign. In Toronto, 1 man is dead after an early morning shooting in the city's entertainment district. A homicide investigation is now underway. Our Dahlia Ashry joins us live from Duncan and Adelaide. Dahlia, what are you hearing from police and people who live around there?
Well, Farah, there was a heavy police presence in the area earlier this afternoon, and the entire area was closed off for investigations after a shooting took place here at around 5 a.m. Police say that they heard gunshots being rung out, and that's when they responded. What we know so far is that there were 3 people that were shot, 1 man and 2 women.
There were reports of multiple gunshots here by the intersection of Duncan and Nelson. Police had responded and located a male suffering from gunshot wounds. 2 other victims were also injured. Life-saving efforts were performed. Unfortunately, the victim was deceased. The other 2 victims who had been shot were transported to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries.
What we know so far about the victim who died, he was a man in his 30s. As for the other 2 victims, they were women around the age. They are around the age of 20 to 30 years old. Now, earlier this afternoon, we also spoke to a man who lives in this area, and he came over to drop off some flowers. And he said that while he didn't hear gunshots in the area, he did hear chaos outside of his place at around 5 a.m.
Just screams, mostly from females, right? And then after that, it just went silent, and I was still looking outside the window, and I saw 2 cop cruisers go by.
Police say that they saw a white vehicle flee the area after the shooting, and it's still unclear whether that's related to the suspect or not. It's still under investigation. Now, there's video surveillance and cameras around the area, which will serve to be important throughout the investigation for the homicide units. And police are asking for anyone who has dash cam or surveillance footage to come forward and contact police. Farah?
Some good information. Thanks very much, Dahlia. Our Dahlia Oshry reporting live from Toronto. If you've ever paid a visit to Cherry Beach on a hot weekend, you know just how hard it is to find parking. Many are forced to find alternative spots, like hopping a curb or pulling into the middle of the lot. But parking violations can cost you a little more than you might expect. Jessica Ng explains.
I didn't think today's trip was going to be this expensive.
A morning visit to Cherry Beach for Selwyn Mohan and his son Matthew rang in at a cool $100. Since it was packed, they parked on the grass.
Yeah, 10 minutes ago we just got the ticket and we were like, you know, sucks. $100 is like, it's hefty.
But even for those who know the rules,
they'll give you a ticket too for parking in the middle here. If there's no lines, you can't park.
The penalty is sometimes unknown.
I guess the ticket might be worth the parking. I don't know what the ticket is. It's $20, $30.
$100.
$100? No, that's not worth parking for to come to Cherry Beach. Definitely not.
Unfortunately, nearly every car parked on the grass here got that same $100 ticket.
During that heat wave, it was just jammed. They were parked on the grass, the whole bit. It's provincial, it's also municipal land, so therefore it's more. It's $100.
Some people at Cherry Beach today say the signage should list the actual price of the parking ticket. They also say at the back of the lot here, there's a lot of space where you could put many more designated spots.
They have all kinds of room here, but they won't put lines down. I don't understand.
Not a great way to end days that start like this.
We planned these like 2 weeks in advance, and today is nice because it's not very sunny, it's not very busy, so I think we'll have a good time.
It's frustrating for Toronto Danforth City Councillor Paula Fletcher, who brought the idea of adding more parking here to City Council a year ago.
Parking enforcement knows that they're going to be able to give out a lot of tickets to make their quota. They spend a lot of time there. For them, it's a honey hole. For the rest of the people getting them, it's a nightmare.
But parking here isn't going to get better anytime soon.
As far as I know, there's no immediate plans to add parking.
A spokesperson for Toronto Police says there are no plans to step up enforcement in the area. For now, though, some beachgoers will stay closer to their vehicles than the shore.
I won't stray too far, so I'm not leaving and going anywhere. I'm just hanging out right here, and that's it.
Jessica Ng, CBC News, Toronto.
Safia Kambalia joins us now with a first look at the forecast. Safia, for those who were able to find a parking spot at Cherry Beach, seemed like a pretty decent beach day.
Yeah, it was not bad. A good time to be at the beach. That reprieve from the hot and humid conditions yesterday on Friday was nice while it lasted, but the sticky, soupy humidity is back. 26, feeling like the mid-30s. That humidity also brought a lot of instability through the past afternoon hours as well. We were watching storms move through the London area and southeast of the 400 through Newmarket, Stouffville, and into Markham. Ton of hail, and what you've been talking about on social media as vicious downpours with some of these storms because of the tropical moisture in the atmosphere. It all came back in along a warm front that lifted in throughout the day today. We could still see that popcorn instability throughout the rest of the evening hours and maybe even to the overnight period. And that risk continues for severe storms potentially throughout the day tomorrow. Now, it's not going to be a washout of a day, but everybody could see the potential of some really heavy downpours. Eyes to the sky if you're at any of the outdoor events tonight at the Budweiser stage or in London at the air show. Tonight, we will cool this evening to 24, feeling like 32 and feeling closer to 40 into the afternoon tomorrow. How long will the heat and humidity last? That is the question. Of course, the heat warning is still in place for those of you around the city of Toronto and the surrounding area. The cold front that will come through throughout the evening tomorrow will bring a greater chance of some potent storms, but it will cool things substantially for the first half of the work week at least. Warm for back to school, though. I'll have those details in the long range.
Thanks, Safia.
You're welcome.
A small town in Ontario is reeling after a gas explosion left 20 people injured on Thursday. As work continues to stabilize the affected area in Wheatley, members of the community have come together to help the displaced. Jennifer LaGrassa has more.
I'm here at Talbot Trail Golf Club in Wheatley, where, as you can see behind me, one family has set up a trailer with food to help families who have been displaced from their homes. Families have been out of their homes since Thursday evening when that blast in downtown Wheatley took place. The community is really coming together right now to support one another and those families who will be living out of hotels almost indefinitely at this point.
I'm a concerned citizen. I've lived in this town my whole life. So the things that have occurred over the last couple days here really set me back. As a business owner in town, I felt like I needed to give back and help. There's a lot of people that need help. Our town just blew up. They're displaced from their homes. We've got a family of 5 that I was just talking to. And that hit home. I got 3 kids of my own, and they're staying at a hotel until Tuesday, and they don't know where they're going to stay after Tuesday.
Renwick told me he's had about 20 families come here to gather food. We know that there were 20 people injured in that explosion. 7 of them went to hospital, and 1 person is still in hospital today recovering. 2 buildings collapsed from that explosion, and downtown Wheatley is still completely closed off and evacuated. Today I heard from city officials that the province is at that scene where the explosion took place. Staff from the Ontario Fire Marshal's office are there with technical experts. There's still an ongoing risk of another blast, so they're considering expanding that evacuation area just as a safety precaution. Municipal officials also met with representatives from the Ministry of the Solicitor General and the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry this morning. They are starting to look into the source of that hydrogen sulfide gas leak. Until that's determined and stabilized, they can't start clearing up the debris. Jennifer LaGrassa, CBC News, Wheatley.
A look at Ottawa today, where the forecast is predicting a rainy weekend. Safia will be back next with your long-range forecast. A family is walking in remembrance of their brother who died fleeing a residential school 50 years ago.
For Joe, it's a spirit walk. It's to bring his spirit home. We have a lot of family members here that have come out to join.
Joseph Caminada was 13 years old when he was hit by a train fleeing the Mohawk Residential School in Brantford. His sister says the discovery of the mass graves of Indigenous children brought up her desire to complete this walk with her family. Part of this initiative was also to raise funds.
Whatever we had left towards going towards something like helping the other First Nations to search the residential schools.
The walk began yesterday and will conclude tomorrow with a ceremony. Canada has its first gold medal at the Tokyo Paralympics, and it came in dominant fashion. Hurricane Ida has now strengthened to a Category 2 storm, and it is projected to get even stronger before making landfall on the southern U.S. coast. The American National Hurricane Center predicts the storm will hit the Gulf Coast on Sunday, 16 years to the day that Hurricane Katrina devastated the same region. Louisiana's governor says Ida is expected to land a Category 4 storm. President Biden has dispatched 500 extra FEMA workers to assist with preparations They are securing food, water, and generators for those who live in the storm's current path. Let's go back to Sophia now for a look at our extended forecast here in the region. Sophia, it looks like we're heading into some unsettled weather, but the heat is sticking around.
Yeah, dog days of summer still present for us here at home. I want to head back to Ida for a minute, though, for Category 4. Just try this on for size. Millions of Americans on edge right now for what will be upwards of 200-kilometer-an-hour winds at landfall. You mentioned it's churning out in the Gulf of Mexico. Really favorable conditions with warm ocean waters that will only continue to rapidly intensify this storm that is on track to make direct landfall just west of the populated area of New Orleans. But our heat and humidity causing a little bit of active weather here at home as well. I mentioned the dog days of summer. Correct me if you've heard this before. Forecast in the high 20s, low 30s, and feeling close to 40. Heat warnings still in effect. Will be there present for a few more days, and thunderstorm icon will be there for much of this weekend. It will not be a washout, though, for everybody, but eyes to the sky. Remember, if thunder roars, you want to head indoors, especially if you're planning any outdoor events. There is a little bit of hope at the end of the tunnel when it comes to a break from all the heat and humidity. Until then, though, this is our story picture, folks. We're within this warm sector. It's all the way up into northern Ontario, in fact, and underneath it, we've got that tropical humidity, a lot of moisture in the atmosphere, the chance for all the storms. And look what happens Sunday into Monday. That's when the cold front comes through. It will freshen things up in behind it, could cause the chance for some more potent storms along it, though. Not a ton of rainfall in the forecast for many of you in the GTA, but this could be a deluge. The potential of really heavy downpours if you have a storm come through. The storm risk is still there throughout the evening hours tonight, and then widespread into tomorrow. We still are watching some of those severe thunderstorm warnings now at your doorstep in Mississauga, Brampton, Newmarket, and Vaughan. The cooler air comes in for the first half of the week next week before a hot, long weekend.
Thanks, Safia.
You're welcome.
And that is our show for you tonight. Thanks for watching. You can stay caught up on news anytime on our website at cbcnews.ca. Have a great night.